Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another conversation about 7th grade science. Today, we are going to be talking about biomes. For those of you who were gone, you missed Bill and I, so this is how we're going to get you all caught up. A biome is a group of ecosystems with similar climates and organisms. So, really, all of these areas of the Earth have certain things in common. You'll see the same type of animals, you'll see the same type of plants, and you'll see the same weather patterns over time. There's 6 major biomes that we're going to talk about, and we're going to go through them in order. We will have deserts, rainforests, grasslands, deciduous forests, boreal forests, which can also be called the taiga, and the tundra. Biomes are mainly determined by the climate. Again, that's the annual temperature and precipitation over time. Remember that climate is a limiting factor. So if you think about how climate limits things, the heat limiting the time or types of plants that can grow there, and the type of fur or physical adaptations that an organism may have, it makes sense that that would limit what could actually live in an area, therefore determining the biome. First biome to talk about is the desert biome. In the desert, you're going to have less than 25 centimeters of rain per year. Some deserts actually receive no rain. Large temperature shifts throughout the course of the day, so at night it could be freezing cold in the desert, and then during the daytime it's going to be really, really hot. Plants and animals that live there are going to have adaptations that make them specially suited to that environment. So think about a camel's long eyelashes being able to blink the sand and dust away. Think about lizards' little tiny bodies having low surface area, allowing them to stay cooler over time. This is an example of a desert. It is sand and hot. But even though this is a sandy and hot desert, the largest desert is actually Antarctica. Looking back at those descriptions of what the biome was, if it's receiving less than 25 centimeters of rain per year and has large temperature shifts, it's a desert, and the animals have adaptations. So when you're thinking of deserts, most of the time you're going to think of a picture like this, but don't forget Antarctica is also a desert. Certain animals that can live in a desert biome have those adaptations. This is an example of a food chain, not a web, because notice they're not overlapping, of some animals that would live in a desert biome. This is a map from your book of where desert biomes can be found. Notice that it's not necessarily a specific line of latitude. It's just weather patterns over time as you have the wind and different pressure fronts moving through. Also notice that I disagree with your textbook. If you look at this diagram, you're going to notice that Antarctica is not colored, but it should be. Rainforests are going to be our second type of biome. We're going to focus on 2 main types of rainforests, the temperate rainforests and then the tropical rainforest. In a temperate rainforest, you're going to have that pattern of lots of rain, over 300 centimeters per year, but the weather is going to be much more temperate. Temperate means having moderate temperatures. So even though it's a rainforest, a lot of times we'll find these up in like the Pacific Northwest, and it's like 70 degrees year round, but it rains almost every day. So the characteristic here is rain in the rainforest. Temperate rainforest, temperate temperatures. An example would be Forks, Washington. Does anyone know what famous movie Forks, Washington was featured in? That's right, vampire friends. It was Twilight and the Twilight series. Forks, Washington is a great place for vampires to live because it's overcast most of the time and raining. Thus, rainforest. Tropical rainforests are going to be warm and humid, but they still have that characteristic of over 300 centimeters of rain. Ecologists believe there are more species living in the rainforest than anywhere else on planet Earth. Animals that live in the rainforest include things like monkeys, toucans, macaws, snakes, lots of tree frogs, and then plants such as tall trees, vanilla, cocoa, rubber tree, orchids, lots and lots of vegetation. That butterfly is a blue morpho butterfly. Awesome adaptation, looks like the sky. There are going to be 4 main levels in a rainforest. You will not be tested over them, But remember when we talked about limiting factors at the beginning of this chapter, we talked about the trees in the rainforest growing taller and taller. This is going to be the canopy of the rainforest. Look at how tall that tree is. It's just amazing. Ah! It went rogue. Okay, rainforest biomes are found mostly in the equatorial region, but then you have that purple region up in the Washington area of temperate rainforests. Grasslands are characterized by, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, grass and other non-woody plants. So basically your short, little, tiny, stubby grasses. If you've ever driven out past Wichita or towards Wichita on I-35, you have driven through a grassland. The state of Kansas is mostly grasslands. However, we do not live in a grassland. I'll tell you where we live in a second. Grasslands receive between 25 and 75 centimeters of rain each year. Fires and drought are really common, and actually farmers will oftentimes burn off the fields in Kansas to promote vegetation growth. Most of the time it's found in the middle latitudes, and in other areas of the world, they're called a savanna. In the savanna, they get as much as 120 centimeters of rain, so a little bit more. Primarily, we have large herbivores that live in the grasslands. Thinking of really big animals with really big feet. Elephants, rhinos, bison, buffalo, kangaroos, zebras. All examples of things that would live on a grassland. And then also looking at that characteristic of camouflage. When we watch Living with Tigers, lions are perfect grassland animals. They fit right in. Meanwhile, tigers with their stripes, not such a great camouflage. Plants, grass, not a surprise. Grassland biomes found all over the world, again kind of in that middle latitudes range. Deciduous forest is where we live. We're actually in an eastern deciduous forest. In a deciduous forest, trees drop their leaves. So again, it's that little bit of alliteration with that letter D. Deciduous, drop their leaves. So deciduous forest, 50 centimeters of rain, growing season of 4 to 6 months. And then after things grow, the leaves will change colors and drop those leaves. Temperatures vary greatly throughout the course of the year, making for seasons and also making for animals that will migrate. Chipmunks, skunks, birds, deer, raccoons, wolves, pheasants, owls. Since we live in one, if you look out your window, it's pretty easy to see an animal that would be characteristic of the deciduous forest. Deciduous forests mainly in the upper latitudes, but again, kind of like in your rainforest, it's going to be in areas that really are impacted by high and low pressure fronts. And we can talk about that a little bit more in class. Now we get to the boreal forest or the taiga. Don't you love that word? It sounds like tiger, taiga. In the taiga, you have a lot of conifer trees. So it's kind of like the deciduous forest, but the boreal forest, it's conifer trees. Conifers have cones. Deciduous trees drop their leaves. Coniferous trees have cones. It's one way to remember it. In your boreal forest, you have a wide range of precipitation. 20 centimeters to 200 centimeters of rain. But it's really those trees and organisms that help to characterize it, and they have very cold winters. Very cold. Which is why most of the animals that live there are really fluffy, and I love it. You have moose and red squirrels and beavers and lynx and otters and great horned owls. Take a look at this one. This is a red squirrel. Look at his little mohawk. I love him. They're super fluffy, and a lot of times even their paws will have some amount of fur on them to help them stay warm. Trees are going to be, again, trees with cones, spruces, firs, anything that resembles those trees that are popular in December. Boreal forests are going to be in your northernmost regions, the ones that are most impacted by the darkness when we get towards those winter months. Also, I thought this was interesting. Most of the trees have a thick waxy layer to them, which help them to keep in the water. As you're having those colder months, they keep in the precipitation and keep themselves alive and hydrated. Last but not least is the tundra. The tundra is in the uppermost region. Take a look at that picture. Not any tall vegetation. In the tundra, they receive less than 10 centimeters of rain each year, so it's very similar to the desert, looking back at Antarctica and lack of precipitation. It's extremely dry and extremely cold. Matter of fact, it is so cold that the soil in the tundra is frozen most of the year. And that's why it receives the special name of permafrost. It is permanently frozen soil in the tundra. Animals do live there. Most of them have a characteristic that makes them successful of living in the snow, like the Arctic fox, caribou, wolves. They'll have really broad paws, and they'll also have that characteristic of camouflage. Not a lot of tall things can grow for a couple reasons. One, they don't have a lot of precipitation, and two, they don't have warm enough temperatures or enough sunlight for most of the year. So mosses, grass, dwarf trees. Tundra is going to be right up above the taiga, also known as the boreal forest. So that northernmost region of the world is going to make up our tundra biome. Mountains are not part of any major biome. So even though it's cold and even though they have climate patterns, because it varies so much, mountains are not considered part of a biome. Go ahead and try page 86. And if you really want to go above and beyond, we could do this tomorrow for bell work, but coloring the outlines of the biomes you see. Remember, which biome do we live in? If you said boreal forest, or, I'm sorry, no, I lied. Ooh. If you said eastern deciduous forest, you are correct. Kansas would be right about here on your map. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a couple facts about biomes. We will talk about how these interact with our adaptations and with our cycles tomorrow in class. Have a great night. Talk to you soon.